When Autumn Comes Again. Chapter 1, The First Leaves Fall. It was a late September morning in a small New England town. The air was cool, and the first golden leaves had begun to fall. Emily Carson, a quiet and thoughtful young woman in her late 20s, had just returned to her hometown after 5 years in New York City. A writer by profession and a dreamer at heart, she had come back hoping to find peace after a painful breakup and the fast-paced exhaustion of city life. On her first morning home, Emily visited the town's old bookstore, Willow Pages, a place filled with childhood memories. As she reached for a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, her hand brushed against another. She turned, and there he was. James Whitmore. Her high school best friend. The boy who once made her laugh during math class, who walked her home when it rained, who held her hand the night before she left for New York. He had once been her almost love. And now he stood before her, older, broader, with eyes still full of kindness. Chapter 2, Rekindled Echoes. James had never left town. He had become a history teacher at the local school and lived a quiet life filled with books, weekend hikes, and the occasional memory of Emily. Their reunion was gentle, like autumn sunlight warming the skin. They began to meet often. Coffee at the local cafe, long walks under maple trees, shared silences that said more than words. Emily found herself smiling again, her heart loosening from the grip of past heartaches. One evening, as they sat by the lake watching the sun melt into amber hues, James turned to her. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" Emily looked down, the wind playing with her hair. "Sometimes. But I'm not sure if we were ready back then." "And now?" She looked at him, and for a moment, the world hushed. "I don't know. But I'd like to find out." Chapter 3, Storms and Letters. Just when everything felt right, a letter arrived. It was from Emily's former publisher in New York, offering her a year-long fellowship in Paris. It was a dream opportunity, something she had wanted for years. But now it came with a cost. James saw the torn look in her eyes. "You should go," he said gently. "You've always belonged among words and old cities. But what about us?" "We'll still be here," he whispered. "At least, I will." They parted with a long embrace beneath a maple tree, where the leaves fell like soft tears around them. Chapter 4, 1 year later. Paris was everything Emily had imagined, poetry readings by the Seine, rainy afternoons with coffee and books, and a quiet ache in her chest every time she thought of James. She wrote to him every week. Long letters filled with thoughts, memories, and questions. James replied faithfully. His words were simple, sincere, and full of warmth. But neither of them spoke of love directly. It hovered unspoken between the lines. When the fellowship ended, Emily returned home. Her heart beat fast as she stepped off the train. She walked through town, past familiar streets, her feet taking her to the lake where they had once sat. And there he was. Waiting. Chapter 5, When Autumn Comes Again. "I wasn't sure you'd come," she whispered. "I was never going to stop waiting," he said. This time, there were no more missed chances. No more waiting for the right moment. Emily wrapped her arms around him, and everything felt right, like a story finally finding its ending. Or perhaps, its true beginning. As the leaves fell once more, painting the town in hues of gold and red, Emily and James walked hand in hand, ready to write the next chapter, together. The Light Between the Pines. In a quiet village nestled at the edge of a pine forest, there lived a young woman named Alara. She was a librarian at the town's only library, a gentle soul with eyes full of dreams and fingers that often traced the edges of forgotten poems. Every morning, she walked beneath the towering pine trees, letting the wind carry whispers of untold stories to her heart. One rainy afternoon, as she organized a shelf of ancient travel books, a stranger entered the library. He was tall, with a tired smile and a worn leather satchel. His name was Aidan, a photojournalist who had traveled across continents but had returned to this village, his childhood home, after the sudden passing of his father. Alara noticed the way he lingered over a book of poetry by Neruda. She offered him tea, and they sat by the tall windows, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. Days turned into weeks. Aidan came back again and again, sometimes to borrow books, sometimes just to sit in silence. They talked about everything: books, cities he had seen, and her dreams of writing one day. She told him about the Lantern Festival her father used to take her to as a child, and how she hadn't gone since he passed. As autumn arrived, their bond deepened. Aidan started taking photographs of the village again, and one day he asked if Alara would walk with him through the pines to a clearing he remembered from childhood. They found the place bathed in golden light, quiet except for the rustle of falling leaves. "I used to come here when I felt lost," he said softly. Alara looked at him, then at the light streaming through the branches. "Maybe we both found something here." Winter brought silence, but not distance. They wrote letters to each other, even though they lived minutes apart. Aidan gave her a photo he had taken of her beneath the pines, and Alara gave him a notebook filled with poems she had written but never shared with anyone before. Then one night, as snow fell quietly over the village, Alara stood in the middle of the frozen forest, lanterns glowing around her. Aidan had recreated the festival she spoke of, just for her. She laughed and cried at the same time. "How did you remember all this?" "I remember everything about you," he whispered, taking her hands in his. He kissed her under the lantern light, and the pines stood like silent witnesses. Years passed. They traveled together, Alara writing, Aidan photographing. They returned often to the village, where the library still stood and the pines still whispered. And each year, on the first snow, they lit lanterns in the forest where they first fell in love, where light and memory lived between the pines. Beneath the paper lanterns. In the heart of a small riverside town in Japan, where cherry blossoms kissed the breeze every spring and paper lanterns lit up the night sky like fireflies, lived a quiet calligraphy artist named Ren. Ren had lived most of his life alone, surrounded by brushes, ink, and ancient poetry. His shop, nestled on a narrow cobblestone street, was known for the beauty of its handwritten scrolls. Yet, beyond his art, very few knew the man behind the ink, his gentle heart, his quiet sorrows, and the dreams he tucked away beneath his calm expression. One summer evening, as the Tanabata festival filled the town with laughter, color, and the soft murmur of wishes tied to bamboo trees, Ren met Hannah. She entered his shop holding a broken paper lantern in her hands, asking if he could repair the characters written on it. "It's from my grandmother," she said with a smile. "She used to say if you rewrite the wish, the stars will hear it again." Her eyes sparkled like the river under moonlight, and her presence felt like sunlight seeping into a cold room. Ren, intrigued by her warmth and the old superstition, agreed to help. As he carefully rewrote the faded kanji, Ai to Ayan, love and eternity, he felt something stir in him, something he hadn't felt in years. From that moment, Hannah began visiting often. Sometimes to buy scrolls, sometimes to bring tea, but mostly just to talk. She was a teacher in the nearby school, with a laugh that melted silence and stories that made even the ancient ink on his shelves feel new again. Over time, their friendship bloomed like the wisteria on his garden wall. One rainy afternoon, as the sky wept softly against the wooden windows, Wren finally asked, "Why do you always come here?" Hannah smiled and replied, "Because when I'm here, the world slows down. And when I watch you write, I remember that beautiful things take time." It was then that Wren realized he had fallen in love. But love, for Wren, was something he had buried long ago with memories of a heartbreak he never spoke of. Fear crept into his heart, whispering doubts, painting shadows over hope. And Hannah noticed. Her visits grew quieter, her smiles more distant. One evening, as lanterns once again floated across the river for Tanabata, Hannah left a small scroll on his doorstep. It read, "Even the stars wait. But not forever." She was gone the next morning. Days turned into weeks. Wren's brushes stayed dry. His hands, once so sure, now trembled with regret. He wandered the town, hoping to see her, to say what his silence had hidden. Then one autumn day, as red leaves danced through the air, he found her in the schoolyard, painting lanterns with children. He walked up to her, holding a new scroll. "I finally finished this," he said. She unrolled it gently. In bold, elegant strokes, it read, "Stay with me. Love and eternity." Tears welled in her eyes. "I thought you'd never say it," she whispered. He smiled. "I was writing it in my heart every day." They embraced beneath the falling leaves, two souls no longer waiting, finally finding their forever, beneath the paper lanterns and the watchful stars.